transfer window has closed in Europe and there have been some incredible signings this summer. Today we'll be taking a look at those as well as trying to answer the question, who won the 2023 summer transfer window? The focus will mainly be on the Premier League today, but many special mentions have to be made. Inter Miami signed Jordi Alba, Sergio Busquets and Lionel Messi, who will be raising the league to a level never seen before, and they've already reaped the benefits of having won a trophy due to Messi's incredible influence. The Saudi teams have gone money crazy and have signed some of the most famous footballers in the world with the likes of Neymar, Benzema, the current Ballon d'Or holder, Kante, Mane, and many more taking the opportunity of a lifetime for generational wealth over in Saudi Arabia. Across Europe, there have also been some huge signings, such as Jude Bellingham making his way over to Spain to sign for La Liga giants Real Madrid. Bayern Munich have managed to pry Harry Kane away from Tottenham for his first permanent transfer away from London in his career in an attempt to reclaim the Champions League. PSG have arguably had a great window by keeping Kylian Mbappe at the club despite the chaos surrounding him, Real Madrid, and a possible Saudi League transfer. But let's take a look at the Premier League and who has come out on top of the current transfer window. First up, we have Arsenal, and they made 4 signings this transfer window. One was a loan for David Raya to provide some competition for Aaron Ramsdale. But then the big 3. Jurrien Timber, a versatile defender coming in from Ajax for nearly £40 million. Kai Havertz signing for 65 mil from Chelsea. And the big one, Declan Rice, for a then British transfer record £105 million. Monstrous signings that should surely help Arsenal fighting for another title this season. And when you're getting that close like they did last year, what you want to do is push on, and they've done exactly that. Unfortunately, Timber got injured early, but great signings for Arsenal. Outgoings, they had a lot, but the substantial ones, Balogun to Monaco for 34 mil, Tierney out on loan, Matt Turner to Forest for 10 mil, Xhaka went to Leverkusen for 20 mil, and then the likes of Pablo Mari, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Charlie Patino, Marquinhos, Nuno Tavares, Sambi Lokonga, and Rob Holding have all left the club after failing to really make their mark in the squad. Overall, really good window for Arsenal, and intriguing to see how they'll do this season. Aston Villa are next up, and they've made some great signings. Following on from the success of last season under Unai Emery, where they flew up the table, they have brought in some big names like Pau Torres from Villarreal for a good fee, Moussa Diaby from Bayer Leverkusen, who looks like an electric winger that is already taken to the Premier League. They signed Yuri Tielemans on a free from Leicester. They got Zaniolo on loan from Galatasaray and Clement Longley on loan from Barcelona. This is just adding to an already solid squad that they had built last season, where they had a few injuries such as Diego Carlos. And if we look through their sold players, there's not much that would be seen as a big loss for them. Cameron Archer, Aaron Ramsey, Marvelous Nakamba, Ashley Young, Morgan Sanson are the only real players that were getting game time previously, so really good transfer window from Aston Villa. Bournemouth have spent a good amount of money, and I think it's gone a little bit under the radar. Alex Scott has come in for 25 mil from Bristol City, who's a very highly rated young player. Max Aarons has finally made the move away from Norwich to get back to the Premier League, and he's come in for about 7 mil. Romain Favre, a winger from Lyon, has come in, as has a left-sided winger in Justin Kluivert. Hamed Traore and Milos Kerkez have come in for big fees, as has Tyler Adams. And they also managed to get Sinistera from Leeds on loan. With not too many noticeable outgoings either, they lost Jefferson Lerma to Crystal Palace, and Stanislas has played for them a good amount over the years, but aside from that, this is a very good transfer window from Bournemouth, and this could easily be enough to keep them in the league this year. Now we move on to Brentford, who have brought in Kevin Schade, Mark Flecken, Nathan Collins as their biggest players, whilst again not losing that much. They loaned out David Raya to Arsenal, as mentioned before, but it's a decent transfer window for Brentford, and the main thing so far is keeping Ivan Toney for when he's back from his ban. Now, he could very easily leave in January, and that would be a big hit for Brentford, but as it stands, decent window. Brighton are the first club where we're going to talk about big outgoings first. First up was Alexi McAllister to Liverpool for 35 mil, a good signing for Liverpool, and he was really good for Brighton last season, so it is a loss in their midfield. They then sold Robert Sanchez to Chelsea for 25 mil whilst they tried to sort out their goalkeeper situation over there. Another goalie who's been really good for Brighton, but did lose his place towards the end of last season. And then the big one, the new British transfer record, Moises Caicedo for £115 million. The most outrageous transfer fee, but Brighton are loving life. He was really good last season, but that amount is just bonkers. They were always going to say yes to that, and so let's see what's come in the other way. Brujan has come in for 16 mil, good transfer this one. João Pedro was a big money signing from Watford. They got Dahoud and James Milner on a free, and one of the craziest ones, Barcelona's number 10. Joining Brighton on loan was not on my bingo sheet, but Ansu Fati is now a Seagull. Crazy window from Brighton, and they've started the season looking good, so despite selling some of their stars from the previous seasons, it doesn't seem to have really affected them yet. De Zerbi and Brighton masterclass. Burnley next up, and the thing with Burnley is that they had some players on loan last season that really helped them get promoted to the Premier League. They were obviously going to go back to their clubs, and then it was whether they could bring them in on permanence or have to replace them. So they've brought in a lot of players, many for smaller fees, some loans and some free signings, including James Trafford from Man City, Aaron Ramsey from Aston Villa, Sander Berg from Sheffield United, and Nathan Redmond from Besiktas, whilst only making one actual sale in the summer of Bobby Thomas to Coventry. Everything else was free or released or on loan. And so far, they're not doing great in the league. Was it maybe a miss of a transfer window? Chelsea. Where do you start with them? Let's see what they lost. Kai Havertz to Arsenal, 65 mil. Great for Chelsea. Kovacic to Man City for 30 mil. Decent amount. Loftus-Cheek went for 17 mil to AC Milan. Mason Mount was sold for 60 mil to Man United somehow. Pulisic went for nearly 20 mil as well. Hudson-Odoi went for 5 mil. They've loaned out Lewis Hall. Romelu Lukaku, one of the biggest Premier League flop signings of all time. They've managed to sell Mendy to the Saudi League, as well as Koulibaly. Kante, Azpilicueta, Aubameyang have all left for free. The record signing keeper in Kepa has gone out on loan to Real Madrid. It's crazy. Let's look at the incomings to balance things out. Disasi came in from Monaco at centre-back for nearly 40 mil. Nicholas Jackson, who's looked really good so far in the league, is a 30 mil striker from Villarreal. Nkunku from Leipzig was organised ages ago, so he was a really good value transfer at about 50 mil, but picked up a massive injury, which will keep him out for a while. Sanchez and Caicedo from Brighton for a combined £140 million. Insane. Ugachukwu came in for nearly 25 mil. Lavia was 58 million. Petrovic, a keeper, for 14 mil. Washington for 17 mil. Pars for 17 mil. And Cole Palmer for 40 plus million pounds. Chelsea's spending is just a joke, but you can sort of see how they've afforded some of it with the big money transfers that they've had out. It is a refresh of the squads, even though some of it is refreshed from just last summer, and Poch now has a job on his hands to try and get everybody to gel as quick as possible. It could be a great window for Chelsea, but we really need to see the chemistry of this team going forward before we can judge that. Crystal Palace have signed Rob Holding from Arsenal, Dean Henderson from Man United, Jefferson Lerma from Bournemouth, and Mateus Franca from Flamengo, whilst losing some old-time players like Milivojevic, MacArthur, Jack Butland, Wilfried Zaha. It's a bit of a sideways window, I would say, for Crystal Palace. Not great, not awful. Everton have been in a bit of a mess for the last couple of years. Did they fix it with this transfer window? Well, they brought in Ashley Young. Luckily, he wasn't the only signing. They did also get Jack Harrison. They got Beto. They really needed a striker. They got Chamiti from Lisbon, another striker, and Danjuma on loan, whilst losing out on Alex Iwobi to Fulham, Mason Holgate, Nkunku, Tom Davies, Yerry Mina, Andros Townsend, Tom Cannon, Neil Morpie, and Jean-Philippe Gbamin. Their new strikers need to hit the ground running, otherwise this is an L of a transfer window for Everton when they're already looking really dodgy in the league. We move on to Fulham next. They've brought in Raul Jimenez from Wolves, Alex Iwobi from Everton, Calvin Bassey from Ajax, Adama Traore from Wolves, Timothy Castagna from Leicester. Some decent signings there. And in return, they've lost Alexandra Mitrovic for 45 mil to Saudi. And not much more in terms of people that actually played. So a pretty good transfer window for Fulham, which should hopefully solidify their place in the Premier League. Liverpool have had a very interesting transfer window this year. And with rumours of a mega £200 million Saudi bid for Salah incoming, it could get even more interesting. But as is what has happened so far, they lost Fabinho to the Saudi League, as well as Jordan Henderson and Roberto Firmino. Naby Keita, James Milner, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Fabio Carvalho have all departed. And so their midfield was incredibly light. And so their 4 signings this summer have all been midfielders. Starting off with McAllister from Brighton, great acquisition for them. Dominic Szoboszlai was a big money move from RB Leipzig, 60 mil, but has hit the ground running in the Premier League. They then signed a more experienced player in Endo as a more well-rounded midfielder for 16 mil from Stuttgart. And then they've taken the punt on Ryan Gravenberch from Bayern Munich for 34 mil. So they've completely redone their midfield in an attempt to revitalise the squad to push for Champions League football and maybe even a Premier League. It's hard to say how good the window has been because they've completely revolutionised rather than adding to their squad, so only time will tell. Luton have had to spend some money not just on their stadium, but on signings to try and stay in the Premier League, which is going to be a very hard task. Kabore on loan from Manchester City, Marvelous Nakamba from Aston Villa, they got Chong from Birmingham, Giles from Wolves, Ross Barkley from Nice, Tim Krul from Norwich, and Lokonga from Arsenal, whilst releasing some players and loaning a lot out. Will it be enough for them to stay in the Premier League? Probably not. But they're limited with finances and you don't just want to spend an insane amount of money just to go down anyway. I hope for their sake it works out, but they've made some okay signing. Manchester City, we're going to start with the outgoings on this one because there were quite a few. They've loaned out a few highly rated players like James McAtee, Taylor Harwood-Bellis and Tommy Doyle. They've also loaned out Issa Kabore, Callum Doyle, Liam Delap and João Cancelo to Barcelona. In terms of sales, Cole Palmer went for that big money move to Chelsea. Ilkay Gundogan actually went on a free to Barcelona, which is a big loss for City. They sold James Trafford to Burnley, Shea Charles to Southampton, and then they lost Laporte and Mahrez both to Saudi League teams for a combined 55 mil. So what do they do with this money? Well, we know that Man City's recruitment is really good and they've not missed the mark once again this time. Mateus Nunes forced through a move from Wolves for just over £50 million to bolster that midfield, combining with Kovacic from Chelsea. They also spent big money on a centre-back in Josko Gvardiol from RB Leipzig for 77 mil. And they've also brought in Jeremy Doku from Rennes for 55 million pounds. So you have had like-for-like replacements for the big losses. And with a squad that's already stacked, it's another good transfer window for Man City, bringing in some good young players. On to Manchester United now. They've signed Mason Mount for 60 mil, Amrabat on loan from Fiorentina to sort their midfield, Andre Onana for nearly 50 mil, Rasmus Højlund for 70 million pounds from Atalanta, Reguilon as an emergency loan from Tottenham due to injuries, and Johnny Evans on a free. That alone sums up this transfer window. But who did they sell? Well, Anthony Elanga went to Nottingham Forest. They also sold Dean Henderson to Crystal Palace. Alex Telles went to the Saudis. De Gea, Phil Jones, Twanzebe were all released. Fred went off to Fenerbahce for just over 10 mil. And the controversial Mason Greenwood has left on loan, but they're still paying the majority of his wages. Is it a good transfer window for Man U? It really depends on how good Højlund is. He is basically the make or break because they've been calling out for a world-class striker and goalkeeper, and they, in theory, have bought both of those. Newcastle had a great season last year, but what did they do this year? They bought Harvey Barnes from Leicester for £40 million, as well as Sandro Tonali from AC Milan. Very, very highly rated player. Tino Livramento from Southampton for 30 mil, and they also signed Lewis Hall on loan from Chelsea, bolstering their squad a decent amount. Outgoings, they lost Alan St. Maximan to Al Ahly. Chris Wood has left, as has Ryan Fraser, Matty Longstaff, and Carl Darlow. All in all, a positive transfer window where they have definitely gained more than they have lost, and should help them in their bid for getting into the late stages of the Champions League. Now, Nottingham Forest signed 7 players on transfer deadline day. Let's go through who they brought in. Omobamidele from Norwich, Sangare, a huge signing from PSV, Origi from AC Milan, Montiel from Sevilla, Elanga from Manchester United, Chris Wood from Newcastle, Ola Aina from Torino, Matt Turner from Arsenal, Murillo from Corinthian, Nuno Tavares from Arsenal. They also brought in Vlachodimos from Benfica and Callum Hudson-Odoi from Chelsea. The biggest fee is Sangare, but the rest are very reasonable. Forest have done good business here. They've lost Sam Surridge, Andre Ayew, Jack Colback, Jesse Lingard, Steve Cook, and not much else in terms of who actually played. A really, really good window from Forest that should easily see them stay in the Prem. Sheffield United have come up to the Premier League, and these are their incomings. Cameron Archer from Aston Villa for 18 mil, Trusty from Arsenal for 5 mil, Luke Thomas on loan from Leicester, James McAtee on loan from Man City, and the biggest one is Gustavo Harmer from Coventry, who instantly made an impact. Some really good signings there. Will it be enough? Not sure. Unfortunately for them, they did lose Undayi just before the season started, who was a huge player for them. They also lost Sanderberg, and a load of other players have been sold or loaned out. Interesting to see how the season will go for Sheffield United. Let's move on to Tottenham, shall we? Incomings first, we have got Dejan Kulusevski, who is now a permanent transfer from Juventus. James Maddison is the big one from Leicester. I'm so sad to see him leave us, but he has hit the ground running at Spurs. He has been phenomenal already for only 40 mil. Vicario, their new goalkeeper, came in from Empoli. Pedro Porro now permanent at 39 mil from Sporting. Van der Ven, their new centre-back from Wolfsburg, was expensive as well. And they also paid 45 mil for Brennan Johnson from Forest. Some huge incomings there. And under Ange Postecoglou, this could be the recipe for success. And speaking of success, Harry Kane finally left Spurs for £100 million to hopefully, for his sake, go and win some trophies at Bayern Munich. They also sold Harry Winks to Leicester, Lucas Moura was released, and some other loans include Jed Spence, Troy Parrott, Scarlett, and Reguilon. I think they've had a really, really good transfer window, Spurs, even though they've lost their pinnacle in Harry Kane. Penultimate team here, West Ham, brought in Mohamed Kudus from Ajax, Edson Alvarez also from Ajax, Mavropanos from Stuttgart, and James Ward-Prowse from Southampton. 4 really necessary signings for them because they lost Declan Rice to Arsenal for 105 mil, just a gut-wrenching punch to them, and will obviously completely change their team this year. They also sold Scamacca to Atalanta, Lanzini has left the club, as has Arthur Masuaku and Nikola Vlasic. All in all, I think it's been a good transfer window. And the final one is Wolves, who brought in Traore from Metz for 10 mil. Matt Doherty is back from Atletico Madrid. They signed Tommy Doyle on loan from Man City and Bueno from Girona. The problem with Wolves is they're in a mess and they basically just sold. Mateus Nunes forced through a move to Man City. They lost Gonzalo Guedes. Connor Cody went to Leicester. Nathan Collins went for big money to Brentford. Raul Jimenez went to Fulham. And Ruben Neves went for big money to Al Hilal. They also released players like Diego Costa and João Moutinho, with loans for players like Adama Traore as well. Wolves look like they're in massive trouble this season, and this transfer window was an absolute nightmare. So who do you think won? I personally think that Tottenham have had a very good window. I think Nottingham Forest transfer window has gone massively under the radar and is definitely up there as one of the best. Declan Rice alone means Arsenal's transfer window was amazing, but I'm actually going to go for Bournemouth. Some really, really good signings, and they haven't had to spend 50 mil on players. I think they've had a banger here and would definitely move them up in my Premier League predictions table. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, thumb it up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.